Well, South Africa will be one of the countries showcasing at China's first International Import Expo. Trade and Industry Minister Rob Davies says the country has a lot to offer to China.
As South Africa, we are very grateful for the fact that we are a guest country. We've got that status. We will be exhibiting in the National Pavilion and also in one of the enterprise pavilions as well. There will be a focus on value-added products, but particularly in the agriculture and agro-processing value chain, where we have been making some headway in our exports to China recently. There are increases in, for example, wine exports into China, but also other agriculture, agro-processing products. We've now been able to clear a number of the sanitary and phytosanitary measures that would now enable us to export beef into China.
Well, let's continue with this story now from an African perspective, and I'm joined from Johannesburg by Biyalani Mkabela. He's a political economist. Thank you for joining us here on Africa Live. Now, China is opening itself up for business with the whole world. How is South Africa uniquely positioned to become a trading partner that translates to economic growth for your country?
Thanks very much, and all the viewers of China Global Television Network. I think of critical importance, understanding the state of South Africa and the African market at large. It's a continent that is more rich with regard to land and its agricultural products. So when you look from that position, and then you, on the other hand, you look on the metals, which we have a lot of minerals in the country. You look at this agriculture and like mining and metals as a critical, partner trade like elements or goods that can be used for cooperation or like collaboration with these large markets. Much looking at the manufacturing sector, which South Africa and the rest of Africa markets, if we can strengthen our industries, develop them, and we can, we develop them and sustain them, that will be the first position that can turn South Africa and the rest of Africa markets as a global player for sustained cooperation and other strategic regional integrations.
Well, China is looking to import more of Africa's commodities, though. What do you see as Africa's biggest drawback here?
South Africa, with regard to a variety of goods, you can look at industries that have been fully developed or well developed, which you can look on the winery market. So when you look on the winery market, South Africa has been developed around that market. So it needs strategic partnerships to scale up and do a lot with regard to its competitive and comparative advantage within the winery. When you look on the other aspects of agricultural products as well, you look at South Africa and the rest of Africa market having ways to integrate and start to cooperate with other countries that are producing these machines that are needed within the manufacturing. Because even if you can have agricultural products, the future of trade, it is in commodities that can be sustained longer. So agricultural products being perishables, you will need to contain them for a longer time, of which that will need more of manufacturing to sustain the products, and then you contain them in a longer time. And in that, we are having strength, but we are having a huge length of industries that can boom in our market and develop industries in agro-processing and manufacturing. And then you look on metal manufacturing. we are having a lot of strategic like partnerships, and of which, with regard to China as one of the manufacturers of machines for the fourth industrial revolution, they have already manufactured the machines for the robotics and all these artificial intelligence like products. So what we are looking at is to collaborate with them, and sustaining such relationships, it will as well assist South Africa and the rest of the Africa markets with regard to the proper transition to the fifth industrial revolution, where we are looking at 2026, when the fifth industrial revolution will be starting. So if all these industries are developed well, and we have modern machines that will be used, it can assist the country to prepare itself as well for other markets.
Right. Miyelani Mukabela joining us there from Johannesburg. Thank you for your insights. Well, let's get a preview now of what we can expect from Shanghai. CGTN's Rama Nyang is joining me now from Shanghai. Rama, good to see you there. Now, the expo is set to draw more than 2,800 companies from more than 130 countries to Shanghai. That's a lot of countries. Tell us what makes African companies showcasing their appeal to China.
Right then, so I'm going to answer that question with coffee, the coffee I'm craving at the moment, as an illustration. So traditionally, China has not been a coffee drinking nation, but that's changing pretty fast as consumer habits over here do change. That's why Starbucks, for example, is adding 500 stores here just about every year, in addition to the 2,000 they have at the moment. Part of the attraction, China's sheer size. It's home to 1.4 billion people with per capita incomes of just under $17,000 in purchasing parity terms. It's twice as large as India. That rising income means there's demand for a greater variety of products from various sources: Ethiopian coffee, Kenyan tea, and so on. So still sticking with that coffee example, the untapped demand is huge. Per capita consumption of coffee here, less than 90 grams a year. That's about 4 to 5 cups per person per year. Compare that to about 5 kilos in the US and the EU. And that sheer potential explains why some companies in Africa have been trying to break into the Chinese market for a while now. Take Java, for example, the Nairobi-based coffee chain. They've signed an export deal back in August to export coffee and tea here. There's a lot more demand for foreign goods, not just coffee. Alibaba, the Chinese e-commerce giant, they signed a deal just days ago that will let consumers here in mainland China buy produce from Rwanda. Beatrice?
Well, Rama, the expo, though, is a major event and was planned over a year ago. And this was before tensions with China's largest trading partner, the U.S., had escalated. What will an expo of this magnitude, though, say to the U.S. amid those ongoing tensions over tariffs between China and the U.S.?
Indeed, that's a comparison no one can avoid, isn't it? Especially given the September round of tariffs. 10% and $200 billion worth of exports from this side of the world. Unless some kind of deal is arrived at the G20 summit in Argentina later this month, those go up to 25% in January 2019. But let's put that aside for the moment, though. There are some interesting unintended consequences for African firms. One of the exhibitors I spoke to here from Egypt, for instance, pointed out that the US tariffs have actually worked to his advantage because it made Egyptian citrus exports to China relatively cheaper than their American competitors. Now, that, of course, is one positive example, but there's a bit of a risk as well. According to some policymakers and trade experts I've spoken to, African states could get hit in this escalating trade war through rules of origin. Now, that's yet to happen, but it is a legitimate concern for policymakers like this. So an expo in this context is in essence a statement that's saying, yes, there's a trade tariff between the #1 and the #2 economies in the world, but China is still open for business. So ultimately the question is, enterprises in Africa, what are you waiting for? Beatrice, back to you.
Right, Rama Nyang joining us there from Shanghai. Thank you. And we are continuing with this story on China's expo in Shanghai. We can go back now to Cairo, where I'm joined by the Vice President for Metropolitan Business Consultants in Egypt, Hani Abu El Fatou. Thank you for joining us on the program. So, how much do you think China's economic ties with Egypt, though, will help grow the economy and create opportunities?
Well, the participation of Egypt at the expo will be a good opportunity for the Egyptian sector, for the Egyptian economy, to promote the exports. Indeed, the economic ties with China has grown up in the past few years, particularly after the 5th visit of President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi to Beijing this year, more precisely, to attend the FOCAC summit last month. At that summit, Egypt showcased the progress in different fields and particularly the opportunities to invest in Egypt, leveraging on its location highlighted by the Suez Canal. Egypt trade with China has increased significantly since the beginning of this year to be $8.83 billion. And despite the fact that the balance of trade with China is in favor of China, Egypt exports increased by 40% since the beginning of this year.
Well, let's just go to the expo itself, though, Mr. Fatou. Egypt is one of the participants at the China International Import Expo. What will Egypt be showcasing, though, in its bid to penetrate the Chinese market?
As I said, it's a good opportunity for the economy, for the Egyptian companies to explore the Chinese market in different areas, particularly the companies, the 38 companies which will be present at the Egyptian pavilion will include companies from the energy sector, from textile, from agriculture. This will create opportunity for the Egyptian companies to extend business in the Chinese market.
All right, Abu El Fatou joining us there from Cairo. Thank you.